Hello everyone, greetings from PayTabs technical support team. In this series, you will learn how to integrate with PayTabs through our PT2 API's endpoints. And we will walk you through the first integration type, which is the PayTabs hosted payment page. For the purpose of this series, we have created a very simple Laravel project to walk you through the integration process. But feel free to follow the steps in this series with your own project, whatever the programming language or the frameworks used to integrate with PayTabs. So, let's get started. In this video, we are going to learn how we can void a transaction inside our hosted payment page integration type. So, let's get started. First thing you should know, of course, that you can find the full documentation for this part inside PayTabs support portal under the article called the Hosted Payment Page API's Integration Manual. Now, from the integration manual over here, you navigate to step 7, and inside step 7, you will find the part for void a transaction. But, as always, before we start, we highly recommend you to check our solution article, What is Transaction Type, in order to understand the differences between the transaction types and in order to use when to use the correct transaction type. And as of this case, you should know that void transactions are only working with oath type transaction. So you cannot void a sale transaction, you'll need to have an oath transaction. So this is actually what we are going to do. So the first thing we are going to do to initiate an oath transaction, and after that we will void this transaction back to the customer. So first thing, let's check our request payload over here for the hosted payment page. Let's make sure that the transaction type is oath. As you can see, it's captured, so I'm going to change it to oath as it looks here. Then let's get back to our checkout page and let's initiate a simple transaction. Proceed to payment. Simply I'll fill out my payment over here, finish it up, and now as you can see I have the transaction reference, and if I went back to my callback over here, I have created a transaction. Here's the transaction reference and the type of it is oath, and this transaction total of 100 for the Egyptian pound. Now what I want to do now is to void this transaction. So simply, if I get back to where we stopped, navigate to part 3, void transaction, and you can see that the request payload is simply the same request payload for the hosted payment page. We have the 7 required parameter. In addition, we will need the transaction reference. And of course, we don't forget the transaction type will be changed to void. Now, this is exactly what we done here inside our generate void payload. You will see that we have generated the 7 required parameter. You will see that we have added a transaction reference, and we'll see we added a callback just to handle the response. Now, make sure that this cart amount is the amount that will be voided, not the old transaction amount. Now, the next thing we want is to actually pass this transaction reference to this generation or to this request in order to be sent to PayTabs. So before we do that, please make sure that transaction type is of type void. And then we are going here. As you can see, we have created a very simple view for voiding your transaction. Here it goes. And I'm going to take the transaction reference. Goes. And right now what I want to do simply is to choose the amount. And as we said in the capture, the same case is here. You should void an amount no more than the amount for the transaction you are voiding. So this amount is 100. You have the opportunity to void 100 or less. So what we are going to do is actually voiding only 50. And we will click void over here. And as you can see, we had a void transaction. It has been void. The transaction type is release. It's the same as void. Get back to our callback over here. We'll find a new transaction. Its type is release. The release is the same as void. We have voided 15 amount back to the customer. This is simply how you void a transaction, and we are ready to move to the next amount or the next way of managing your transaction.